Denise already tested it, she said.
Yeah, you see here, it's better. So they can see you, okay?
Stu, we might not be streaming. Just give us a second. We might not be streaming, so just
Okay.
give us a second. We want your words to go far and wide.
It's gonna be broadcasted.
And they use this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
When does it do, when does it?
Right.
Hear you.
It's still happening.
Are we ready? Okay, good morning. My name is Stuart Morris, and I am Sally Yang's husband and Joshua's father. I have been a part of the Yang family since 1993. Today, it is an honor and a privilege to have been asked by Elaine, Don, and Sally to deliver a eulogy on their behalf. To begin with, I'd like to share a small portion of the family history as a way of showing where Chu Lan Eng's family life began and how she came to be the mother of 4 very special children who are heartbroken on this sad day. I invite you to read the full history of Chu Lan Eng on the memorial website as lovingly prepared by her granddaughter, Denise Yamaguchi. Chu Lan was born in mainland China. Sally remembers that her mom was actually born on a leap month of a leap year. In the Chinese lunar calendar, instead of adding 1 extra day, they add an extra month every 3 years. She was born on the 2nd June of that year. She grew up in a small brick hut in a very poor village. She lived in that hut with her mother, brother, grandmother, grandfather, and great-grandmother. As a child in China, their neighbor's dog had a litter of puppies. The neighbor gave Chu Lan's family one of the puppies. During China's dog-eating festival, the neighbor prepared their dog for consumption. However, instead of killing their own dog, they accidentally took Chu Lan's dog. She was so upset that she never wanted to own another dog. What might have been a normal childhood in China was drastically changed when the Japanese invaded in 1937 and life became very hard. The war interrupted almost everything, including schools. It almost seemed like every hour the air raid sirens would go off in China. People would disperse when they heard Japanese planes overhead. If they were riding on a bus, the bus driver would shoo the passengers off and tell them to run. People were seen running in all directions. The people would be carrying bundles of food and clothing ready to run. For this reason, Chu Lan's education ended at the 3rd grade level. A teenage boy from a nearby village, Quang Quing Eng, had emigrated to America to escape the Japanese invasion of China in 1937. But Quang returned to China after World War II to find a bride to share his life with. Sally writes, "Our parents had an arranged marriage, which makes it all the more surprising that their goals, ideals, and purposes in life were so similar, and that was to make a better life for their children." They then escaped the communist takeover in 1949 when he brought his bride to America. Once they arrived in America, after a long and arduous voyage, their married life began in relative poverty. Quang worked very long hours, while Chu Lan gave birth and cared for their 4 children. Chu Lan would also go to work as a seamstress to help support the family. She learned to use a professional sewing machine and worked in a factory where most of the people spoke her language. The clothing she made at home was so professional looking you would never have thought they were homemade. She even taught herself how to make her own patterns for the clothing. Friends and family would come to her for help to alter or tailor their personal clothing, and she did it happily. She knitted and crocheted beautifully as well. Mom was talented in so many ways, and she learned to adapt to a new way of life in a strange country where she never learned the language. She never learned to drive, yet even after moving from Chinatown to the suburbs of Flushing, she figured out how to get around by observing what buses were running, what routes. Over the years, through the power of his intelligence and his work ethic, Quang became a very successful businessman and a wise investor. Sally shared with me that it wasn't until she was working on her mother's biography last week that she realized just how much hardship her parents had endured and all the sacrifices they made to give their children the comfortable and secure life they have today. Instead of spending money on themselves, they put away all their savings for their kids. They never complained as they worked long, hard hours every day. They were both extremely generous. Along the way, Chu Lan experienced three great tragedies. In 1996, her beloved daughter Betty died suddenly at the age of 43. 8 years later, in 2004, the patriarch of the family, Kwang, Dad, or Gungung, passed away. Then in 2014, her younger brother, Jack, who was so close to her, fatally slipped and fell on ice after a snowstorm. Heartbroken as she was from these losses, she remained firmly focused on loving and supporting her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The following are Donald's thoughts and memories he cherished from his mother, and these are his words. I remember the warmth, smells, and sounds from her kitchen. Steamed sea bass. On some days, she came home with a fresh whole sea bass, which she would cook in her wok. She would drizzle hot oil, scallion, and ginger over the fish. The meat was smooth and sweet, but the fish eyeballs were the delicacy to be fought over. We knew when she was making steamed pork cake, or yuk bieng, when you heard the quick chopping sound of the heavy cleaver. Heavy chopping meant it was going to be chicken, lobsters, or spare ribs. When she made dung, sticky rice, the steam and fragrance of the lotus leaves would fill up the whole house. At the end of every meal, we looked forward to the crusted rice, liung juk, at the bottom of the pot. This is somewhat a rare dish today, since we all have automatic rice cookers now. On Chinese New Year, we would wake to the steaming cakes that bloomed into good luck cakes, with smiles and red envelopes for the kids. Don goes on. The outings with Mom were full of adventure and fun, but best of all, we always knew that she was there to keep us safe. I remember holding her hands on the train and hearing her admonishment for us to stay together. She would tell us a phrase in Chinese that translates roughly to hold hands and hold feet. As she took us on walks and outings, this was her way of saying, hold on to her or the stroller and not to get separated or lost. The typical arrangement was infant Betty in the stroller with Elaine and Don walking on either side while having to hold on to their side of the stroller with Mom pushing from behind. One day, Don, at age 9, and Mom were riding on a bus in Hong Kong. The fare was 10 cents per person. When the conductor came for the fare, the conductor dropped the coin on the floor. But because the bus was so crowded, he couldn't find it at that point. He continued to collect the fares, figuring he would come back for it later. In the meantime, little Don picked up the coin and pocketed it. When the conductor came back asking Don, Mom defended her son by saying he didn't have it. Shouting back and forth, the conductor finally walked away. But when they got off the bus, Mom asked Don to see his pockets and reprimanded him. But he will always remember how she defended him. She was our comfort and our safe harbor. We will miss her. Elaine shares her memories with her mom in these words. What I remember most about Mom are the Chinese New Year festivities. Mom would take days to prepare for the Chinese New Year Eve, to close out the old year. Mom and Dad made sure to have dishes that have symbolic blessings, such as steamed chicken, representing reunion and rebirth. She and Dad would make cupcakes shaped like Chinese old-fashioned coin, representing more money. Dumplings also are shaped like old-fashioned silver ingots. Steamed fish hopes that New Year will start and finish with a surplus. Spring rolls look like gold bars. Longevity noodles, the longer the noodle, the longer your life will be. Nengo, wish to be successful and higher each year. Wu Mai Tea and lor bak go were two of their very special dishes. They would always tell us stories relating to the foods. For Chinese New Year dinner, Mom and Dad would celebrate with a Buddhist vegetarian dish consisting of 9 ingredients signifying prosperity and good luck. Shrimp chips were made for wealth and fortune. All the dim sum were made by hand, which Mom learned while vacationing in Hong Kong. If Chinese New Year falls on a weekday, when we have to go to work and go to school, she would cook and pack it up so we can bring it all with us. I always looked forward to the red envelopes that have the brand new folded bills inside. Mom and Dad wishing all children progress in school, good health, and prosperity. Plus, they would take us to other families and relatives, wishing the same and giving red envelopes to all of their children. These festivities lasted for weeks. My only regret is that we did not learn to cook as well as Mom and save all those fabulous recipes. Sally related the following stories about family trips with her mom. Our parents took us on many family trips. 2 of the most memorable ones were when they took us to Hong Kong and China. In 1961, the entire family planned to visit Hong Kong for 2 weeks. But because our father's passport was not in order, only our mother and the 4 kids went. The trip actually turned out to be a 9-month visit. We met her younger brother, our Uncle Jack, our grandparents, and many cousins for the first time. We went to Chinese school, learned Cantonese, learned the culture, and even took the cable car tram to Victoria Peak. During that time, many people were leaving China and entering into Hong Kong. Shacks were built on rooftops and could be seen along the mountains. The streets were crowded, and it was hot and humid. Chickens were running around the streets. There was no air conditioning or refrigeration. We saw double-decker buses for the first time. We extended our trip because her younger brother Jack was getting married, also an arranged marriage. On the wedding day, Don went with them to pick up the bride, which was a huge tradition followed by a big celebration. When Uncle Jack took Don to the celebration, there was a cute spotted dog there, and Don started playing with him. Uncle Jack warned him not to play with the dog. Later during dinner, Don found they uncovered a spotted meat dish. He tasted food he had never had before. On another occasion, the family was taking a trip to Sha Tin by train. Mom had the 4 kids with her and wasn't familiar with the area. Not yet approaching the station, the train suddenly stopped and some people started disembarking early. When she saw this happening, she rushed the children to get them off as well. She jumped off first, figuring the children would follow. At that moment, the train started up again. Terrified that she was about to be separated from her children in a foreign country, she frantically ran after the train. At the same time, the kids were also scared, fearing they would never see her again. Fortunately, the train came to a full stop just a little further up. It was a trip that had left long-lasting memories for each of us. Our poor dad missed us so much he couldn't wait until we all returned. The other trip was in 1992. Our mother and father returned to visit their old villages in China with Elaine and Betty. Although the old house was still standing, the roof had blown off and it stood empty. They hired 5 chefs and had a celebratory meal for 250 relatives and friends. They visited the graves of their ancestors. It was emotional to see how far they had come in life. During that trip, Elaine and Betty were both approached by a stranger to help bring electric scooters from Hong Kong to China for them. They were each offered $3,000 Hong Kong, the equivalent of about $400 US, and they accepted the offer. Our parents pleaded with both of them not to do it, for fear there was some contraband or drugs hidden in the scooters. If caught, there would be very serious consequences. Our mother did not sleep or eat for 3 days. Thankfully, everything was okay. In her later years, and prior to the Alzheimer's taking hold of her, she loved spending time with her grandchildren, Jamie, Denise, Joshua, Elizabeth, and Teddy. She could go for hours playing mahjong with them. They all loved her and struggled to learn to speak in broken Chinese in order to communicate with their pawpaw. They were fun times. However, by the time the great-grandchildren, Kai, Lee, Emmy, and Liam came, her loss of memory had already settled in, which was a huge loss to the great-grandchildren and, of course, for her. Finally, I would just like to add a few thoughts of my own. Like Pat and Tony, I was not born into the Yang family. When I fell in love with their youngest daughter, Sally, Kwang and Chu Lan welcomed this Guilo, white devil, into the family with warmth and sincerity, and I will never forget their kindness and love. Joining the whole family for the sumptuous Sunday evening family dinners was a very special treat. Because Pawpaw and I could not communicate with each other, I sometimes would joke about how I was lucky to have the best mother-in-law in the world. But seriously, even without the spoken language, her sweetness and love always showed through. I was always thrilled to see her reaction when my son Josh came to visit her. Her whole face would light up and her smile would absolutely radiate. She loved all her grandchildren with all her heart. Sally and I had sent Joshua to 5 years of Mandarin Sunday school. He hated and resisted it and never really learned very much Mandarin. However, he loved and adored his Pawpaw so much that he independently learned enough Toisan to communicate and joke around with her. They would laugh and giggle throughout these conversations. She would always lovingly call him Kai Doi Joshi, bad boy. I would like to close now by speaking for the entire Eng family. It has been so painful for all of us to watch her decline in the grip of Alzheimer's over the last 7 years. The family that meant so much to her and was the crowning achievement of her life could no longer even be recognized by her. But no disease, no matter how insidious, can make us forget the love she showered upon the entire family throughout her life. Whether you called her Chu Lan, Nancy, Mom, or Pawpaw, she will be in all our hearts and memories forever. Now, we have some other eulogies. First is going to be her grandson, Jeremy Eng, who sent this video from Colorado.
Made with love by Grandma. That's what the tag said. They were soft and flannel and had three. I think they were plaid. Ningin gave us all pajamas for Christmas that year. Mine matched Dad's and Denise matched my mom's. They got nightgowns with small flowers. All of them had a tag sewn in them that said "Made with love by Grandma." They were sewn on that big cast iron sewing machine with the big motor bolted underneath. It made a sound like a small choo-choo train as the needle went up and down. She had a desk lamp shining on her work, and so many pieces of my clothes got stitched together, or backed together, or hemmed to my size under that light. All of it made with love by Grandma. I remember the ginseng soup that was so bitter you had to hold your nose as you drank it. The zhong, wrapped in leaves, filled with salted eggs and meats and mysteries. The Rice Krispie treats that had peanuts and could have used just a bit more marshmallow. All of it was made by love by Grandma. And she would smile, beaming bright as she gave us her treasures. Those pajamas were as warm as her hugs, the food that would fill you up like her love. And when my stomach was full, she'd shake her head in admonishment and tell me to eat more, because you could never be too full of love.
Now we have another video from Joshua, her other grandson, who is also in Colorado.
were how well she knew. For those of you who don't know me or may not recognize me, my name is Josh, and I'm Chulan's grandson. She was my pawpaw, and I'd like to just share some stories, some memories of her that I've been thinking about lately that bring me joy, and hopefully they'll remind you of some good times you had with her or celebrate her life, really.
We're going to hear from Elizabeth, Pawpaw's granddaughter.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Popo's granddaughter. So I'm just gonna start reading, I guess. So I know everybody here knows her, and everybody who does know her knows that she speaks Chinese. Um, Unfortunately, I took many, many years of. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, I took many, many years of Chinese school that my mom forced me to go to, and I tried taking Chinese in high school, but it never really stuck with me. So the way we communicated with each other was through really, really broken Chinese on my part. A lot of English and a lot of like hand gestures, a lot like Pictionary. Um, and although we had like that kind of language barrier between us, it never really posed a problem. I feel like we kind of just subtly understood each other. So I kind of want to tell this little story. So one day I'm over at my best friend's place, and she kind of takes out this tiny little set of mahjong pieces, and she teaches me and my other friends who came over to her house how to play. And I like instantly fell in love with this game. So I had to like tell everyone. I tell my mom, and to my surprise, when I told her, she like casually, like flippantly states that, "Oh yeah, the entire family used to play. Like we have several sets in the basement." So I'm like, "We have to play immediately. Like this is amazing." So when we go over to Popo's place on that Sunday, they take out like this golden set, this huge golden set of mahjong, and we play. We start playing almost every single Sunday, or every time that I get to visit. And mahjong kind of became that, I don't know, that new language between us where we really understood each other. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna also read a poem about that I wrote. Yeah. I see a flurry of yellow butterflies against a sheet of crisp snow, the ones I saw last fall, amongst the decay of leaves. They scatter within confined borders, a contained chaos. Moved in purpose, in perfect cadence, they create gentle waves that crash against the shoreline, and I can't help but tap along to their joyous rhythm. In each direction, their golden wings take flight, until the last winds tire of the seasons, and the last fall's rot has eroded the veins of each leaf. The yellow mist, once filled with vigor, come to rest upon the bare tree once again, ready to embrace the long-awaited winter that slowly lulls them to sleep. Thank you.
Kai Yamaguchi, Pawpaw's great-grandson.
Hi, I am Kai Yamaguchi, Bokbok's great-grandson. My mother, Denise Yamaguchi, and grandmother, Pat Eng, have asked me to read this on their behalf. A visit with Nyan Nyan. I pull up to the familiar corner house in Flushing with its red awning and sloped walkway. I ring the doorbell, and my grandmother peeks behind the door to see who it is. Upon seeing me, she smiles brightly and exclaims, "Wah!" She gushes over how nice it is for me to visit, and I smile sheepishly, knowing I should do so more often. We chat amicably about my kids in broken Chinese as we sit on our worn black leather couches, the same recliner couches that, as kids, we loved the novelty of pulling the reclining levers over and over again, but we would inevitably get told off for wearing the levers out. Yan Yan offers to turn on the TV for me. This was a big treat for us as kids at our weekly dinners. She holds my hands firmly and pats my thigh affectionately as we scan through the channels for something to watch. She wanders away and returns with a giant barrel of cheese balls that she insists I eat. She giggles as she helps herself, embarrassed that she loves them. I forget, she tells me, referring to her stockpile of snacks that she stashed away. As we half-watch some random Chinese variety show, I spy the green plastic phone and toy fire truck on the shelf in the corner. Joshy's toys left there for his visits, even though he might not be as interested in them now, him in his late 20s. We prop our feet up on the plastic footstool that she always kept on hand, and I look at her worn slippers. I tell her Costco has a great sale on house slippers right now, and I could get a pair for her, knowing the word sale was always a big draw. She laughs and leads me to her bedroom closet. On the floor are 4 neatly stacked boxes of brand new house slippers and a collection of terry robes with the tags still on them. She affectionately tells me how everyone is so nice to her with all these presents. We laugh at her collection. Mahjong? I suggest as I grab the familiar brown case of tiles. She tells me she doesn't know if she remembers how to play, as she deftly stacks the tiles with lightning speed. I grab a handwritten Chinese cheat sheet from inside the case. Clearly, the years of her tutoring my brother and I in Chinese writing didn't pay off. I ask her teasingly if she's gone gambling with her friends recently, recalling her weekly trips to the casinos. She laughs and says, "No." As she announces Pung for the 3rd time, I gaze over the stacks of bowls and plates in the china cabinet behind her. Hidden in these drawers are dozens of steak knives, strainers, cooking utensils, and Chinese spoons, all from my grandfather's restaurant days. As we are about to start another game, Yan Yan notices a loose string from her sleeve and quickly grabs the sewing box from behind her to trim it. The box is filled with remnants of her seamstress days, heavy commercial-grade spools of thread, black metal scissors, and packets of needles from the 1950s still perfectly preserved in their original packaging. We spend the afternoon chatting and snacking before I have to return home to pick up the kids from school. She holds my hand tightly and looks a bit sad that I am leaving. "I forget," she tells me again as we embrace one more time at the door. I smile at her and reassure her as I leave. She watches me get into the car, and we wave as I drive away. Her words, "I forget," still lingering in my mind. "It's okay, Nian Yan. You can rest now. We will remember for you."
Jean Engpak, a dear friend of the family.
This is going to be a bit hard. Okay, so I am Jean, or Lai Jean, as Angan used to call me. And ever since Don convinced Pat, my aunt, to marry him, I became part of the Eng extended family. Not just a family friend, part of the extended family. So thank you, Don. So on behalf of the Ngpak family and Gabby, I would like to offer my deepest condolences. She was a really lovely lady. So, for the past 47 years or so, since Don's told me that's how long he's been married, I visited the Eng home on Parsons Boulevard and enjoyed their hospitality, had the best meals ever, especially when Tony was alive. And I got to know Betty, Sally, and Elaine, and eventually their families, grandchildren, and all of that. And during that time, Angen would welcome me at the door with a sweet smile, ask about my grandparents and my family, and she would say a few words. And then she would return to the kitchen to prepare a delicious lunch or dinner. Now, I found out recently from her bio that she was an amazing dim sum maker, which nobody told me. Now, had I known that, I would have invited myself for breakfast too, without any shame. So, over the years, at Pat and Don's home, we celebrated birthdays, Chinese and American New Year's, July 4th, Thanksgivings, Christmases, and many, many barbecues, together with Angen. She and I never had long conversations because my Chinese is not very good. Shamefully, just like, and I'm the older generation. But she always hugged me warmly and squeezed my hand tightly. As if I were a cherished member of the family. And she always smiled and giggled when we complimented her on her mochi cake and Rice Krispie treats. And when we asked for her secret about her beautiful complexion, that flawless skin, I don't think she ever told us. So at these get-togethers, I love to watch her, surrounded by her brother, Uncle Jack, her nephews, her children, their spouses, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and extended family, listening to their stories and sometimes telling her story, some of her story, playing and teaching mahjong, smiling and giggling as she watched the kids play, teasing them and being teased by them. So it seems that food, mahjong, and smiling was the constant here. So when Nguyen passed, my mom said that it was okay because she had passed on peacefully and quietly after a long, happy life, and at the end, surrounded by family who very much loved her. And my mom said that Nguyen was happy, happy. And I do believe that this sweet and gentle soul is happy, happy now. And that when she arrives at Heaven's Gate, this quiet lady will laugh out loudly and joyfully because Betty, Tony, and Uncle Jack will be there to welcome her. And at night, when we look up at the sky and see a twinkling star, that'll be Nguyen, Chulan Nancy Eng, giggling with her heavenly family and sending us all her love. We love you. We'll miss you.
There's a beautiful ceremony, I believe. So we are about to
succedió. Oh, este está.